Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics and a quick update because there was some news that came out last night. Not sure if people saw this, but significant one in my opinion, because obviously we've heard for the past couple months the speculation about whether the US would take the next step after having frozen, or not just the US, but the G7 countries, which froze approximately 300 billion of Russian assets a couple of years ago after their invasion into Ukraine, and recently passed the Repo Act, which would facilitate being able to outright confiscate those assets and take them, sell them, and give the money to rebuild the Ukrainian economy. And the news that came out last night was here, US banks to begin reporting Russian assets for eventual forfeiture under new law. Treasury Department is ordering the nation's banking industry to start disclosing its holding of Russian assets with the goal of eventually seizing those billions of dollars and selling them to aid the devastated Ukrainian economy. So here you can see this was, again, part of the Repo Act, which gives the U.S. government the authority to seize Russian state assets held by U.S. banks. And now, basically, the banks will need to report Russian assets on their books no later than August 2nd. And the interesting part down here, you see the G7 countries, US, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, the UK, and Japan, that froze the 300 billion worth of Russian assets, most of which are in European banks. They said here about 6 billion held in the US banking system. Here's the key part. These assets include hard currency as well as gold and investments in publicly and privately held companies, although, of course, the gold stands out to me in particular there. Not sure how that would go over the fact that there would be confiscated gold in the mix of everything else, but and I wouldn't suggest that this is a move specifically to round up gold in particular, but just stands out as interesting that gold is in the mix there. But perhaps the bigger takeaway being that we're seeing the next step being taken as they are requesting banks to start reporting that. Of course, this comes on the heels. This was released on July 23rd, which is Tuesday, one day after we had this somewhat unusual memorandum from the White House on the delegation of certain functions and authorities under that same REPO, which stands for Rebuilding Economic Prosperity and Opportunity for Ukrainians Act. And here we see, I hereby delegates to the Secretary of Treasury functions and authorities vested in the principle by sections 104A1 and A2A of the Rebuilding Economic Prosperity and Opportunity for Ukrainians Act. So day after that power was given to Janet Yellen, we see the news that they are taking it a step further. Certainly reasonable, in my opinion, to question who's making some of these decisions right now. But anyway, this is as Janet Yellen is headed to a G20 meeting and going to encourage others to call out China overcapacity. So it seems like the divorce between the East and the West is still proceeding on track, unfortunately. But anyway, just wanted to make sure that you had seen that, because certainly in terms of red lines or what could really escalate things further, you hope that's not the case, but at least you can be aware of what's going on out there. So thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you again in a little bit.